They say you never really know someone until they're gone. I used to think that was just something people said at funerals to make themselves feel better about all the conversations they never had. But standing there in that cemetery on a gray Tuesday morning, watching them lower Coach Ray Henderson into the ground, I realized how true it was, and how terrifying. The rain had stopped an hour before, but the sky still looked like it was holding its breath. 200 people showed up, maybe more. Former players, high school coaches, local reporters, guys from the neighborhood who remembered Ray from back when he was just another dreamer with a whistle and a dream. I stood in the front row wearing a black suit that cost more than Ray ever spent on himself in a month, and I felt like a fraud. My agent, Kevin, kept checking his phone. I wanted to tell him to put it away, but I didn't have the energy. My teammate, Troy, stood beside me with his hands clasped in front of him, looking appropriately somber. He'd met Ray maybe twice, but he knew what Ray meant to me, so he came. That's what teammates do. My mother stood on my other side, her hand gripping my arm so tight I could feel her nails through the fabric. She hadn't said much since we got the call 3 days ago. Ray had collapsed during a pickup game at the rec center. Heart attack. Dead before the ambulance arrived. 64 years old. Gone. I kept thinking about the last conversation we had. It was 2 weeks ago, right after I dropped 38 points against the Celtics. He called me from his landline because he refused to get a smartphone. Said it was a waste of money and attention. You got lazy in the third quarter, he'd told me. No congratulations, no celebration, just the truth, delivered in that gravelly voice that had shaped every part of who I was. We were up by 20, coach, and you let them cut it to 12. Lazy. I smiled at the memory. That was Ray. Never satisfied, never comfortable, always pushing. The priest finished his sermon. I barely heard a word. Something about God's plan and eternal rest. I stopped believing in God's plan when my brother Daniel died 16 years ago. If there was a plan, it was a cruel one. People started moving toward the gravesite to pay their final respects. I stayed where I was. I wasn't ready. My mother squeezed my arm again. You need to say goodbye, Marcus. I know, but I didn't move. Kevin leaned in. Marcus, we should probably head out soon. You've got that sponsor meeting at 4. I turned and looked at him. Really looked at him. His perfectly styled hair, his designer suit, his complete lack of understanding about what was happening right now. Cancel it. Marcus, it's a 7-figure deal. We can't just cancel it, Kevin, or I'll fire you right here at my coach's funeral. Your choice. He blinked, stepped back, pulled out his phone and walked away. Troy put his hand on my shoulder. You good, man? No. Fair enough. I finally made myself walk to the edge of the grave. The casket was simple. Pine wood, no fancy brass handles or silk lining. That's what Ray wanted. He'd made his wishes clear years ago. Keep it simple. Keep it real. Don't waste money on the dead. I stared down at that wooden box and tried to imagine him inside it. Tried to picture his face peaceful and still. But all I could see was him on the sideline, red-faced and shouting, pushing me harder than I thought I could be pushed, believing in me when nobody else did, saving me when I was drowning. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. The words felt hollow, insufficient. How do you thank someone for giving you a life? People came up to me after that, shook my hand, told me stories, shared memories. A woman I didn't recognize talked about how Ray had coached her son for free when they couldn't afford the league fees. A man with tears in his eyes told me Ray had driven him to rehab every day for 6 months, never asking for anything in return. I listened to all of it and felt the weight of it settling on my shoulders. Ray had touched so many lives, and I had no idea. I thought I knew him. I thought I understood him. But every story revealed another layer, another side of him I'd never seen. The crowd started to thin out. People had jobs to get back to, lives to return to. My mother hugged me and said she'd meet me back at the house. Troy left with her, promising to make sure she got home safe. Kevin hovered nearby, probably waiting to ambush me with rescheduled meetings and damage control. I stood there alone, staring at the grave. The cemetery workers were waiting at a respectful distance, ready to fill it in. I knew I should leave, let them do their job. Let Ray rest. That's when I saw her. A woman, maybe 50 years old, standing about 20 feet away under a willow tree. She was wearing a simple black dress and holding a worn leather purse. She'd been there the whole time, I realized, standing apart from everyone else, watching. Our eyes met, and she started walking toward me. Marcus Taylor? Her voice was soft, hesitant. Yes, I'm sorry for your loss. He was a good man. Thank you. Did you know him? She nodded. A long time ago. Before you. Something in the way she said it made my chest tighten. Before me. Like there was a version of Ray that existed before I came into his life. A version I never knew. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. Old, yellowed at the edges. My name was written on the front in Ray's handwriting. He asked me to give this to you. If anything ever happened to him. My hands were shaking as I took it. What is this? I don't know. He never told me. But he said it was important. He said you'd know what to do with it. Who are you? She smiled sadly. Someone who owed Ray a debt. Someone who's finally paying it back. That doesn't answer my question. I know. She turned to walk away, and I grabbed her arm. Not hard, just enough to stop her. Please, I need to understand. What did Ray want me to know? She looked down at my hand, then back up at my face. For a moment, I thought she was going to tell me. I could see it in her eyes. The knowledge, the burden. He loved you, Marcus. More than you'll ever know. But love doesn't erase mistakes. And Ray, he carried his mistakes until the day he died. What mistakes? She pulled her arm free gently. Open the envelope. Visit the place he told you never to go. Then you'll understand. What place? What are you talking about? But she was already walking away, moving quickly through the headstones, disappearing into the gray afternoon. I stood there with the envelope in my hand, my heart pounding. The cemetery workers were closer now, shifting their weight, waiting for permission to finish their job. I walked back to my car in a daze, sat in the driver's seat, stared at the envelope. It wasn't sealed, just tucked closed. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a key, old, rusted, with a tag attached to it. The tag had an address written in Ray's handwriting, 1247 Riverside Boulevard, and underneath the address, 3 words that made my blood run cold. I'm sorry, son. Riverside Boulevard. I knew that street. It was in the old part of Detroit near where I grew up, near where Daniel died, and Ray had forbidden me from ever going there. I was 14 the first time I asked him about it. We were driving back from an away game, and I saw the sign for Riverside Boulevard. I mentioned that my mom used to take me and Daniel to a gym down there when we were kids. Ray's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You stay away from that area, Marcus, you hear me? Why? It's just... I said stay away. That's not a request. That's an order. His voice had been so sharp, so final, that I never brought it up again. Over the years, I'd forgotten about it. Moved on. Focused on basketball and the future. But Ray hadn't forgotten. He'd been carrying this key, carrying this secret. And now he was gone, and I was sitting in a cemetery parking lot with a piece of his past in my hands. I should have gone home, should have thrown the key away, should have respected his wishes and let the past stay buried. But I couldn't, because for the first time since Ray came into my life, I realized I didn't really know him at all. And the only way to say goodbye to someone is to understand who they really were. I started the engine and pulled out of the cemetery. Kevin called twice. I sent him to voicemail. My mother texted asking if I was coming to the house. I told her I'd be there later. I drove toward Riverside Boulevard, toward the place Ray had forbidden me from ever visiting, toward whatever truth was waiting for me in the shadows of his past. The rain started falling again as I crossed into the old neighborhood. The streets were cracked and forgotten, lined with boarded-up buildings and empty lots. This used to be a thriving area when I was a kid. Now it looked like the city had given up on it. I found 1247 Riverside Boulevard at the end of a dead-end street. It was an old brick building, 2 stories tall, with a faded sign hanging above the entrance. Riverside Gym. The windows were covered with plywood. The door was chained shut. Graffiti covered the walls. But above the door, barely visible under years of dirt and neglect, was a painted basketball. My hands were shaking as I got out of the car. The rain soaked through my suit jacket, but I didn't care. I walked up to the door and looked at the chain. There was a padlock holding it closed. Old, rusted. I pulled out the key. It fit perfectly. The lock opened with a metallic click that seemed impossibly loud in the empty street. I unwrapped the chain and let it fall to the ground. The door swung open with a groan, revealing darkness inside. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing a large open space, basketball court in the center, bleachers along the walls, everything covered in dust and debris. I stepped inside. The air smelled like mold and old wood and something else, something familiar that I couldn't quite place. My footsteps echoed as I walked deeper into the gym. The flashlight beam swept across the walls, revealing old posters and team photos. Most of them were faded or torn, but one caught my eye. It was a team photo from 1998, a group of teenage boys in matching uniforms, holding a trophy, and standing behind them, younger but unmistakable, was Ray. I moved closer, studied the faces, and then my heart stopped, because there, in the front row, third from the left, smiling at the camera with a trophy in his hands, was my brother Daniel. Daniel, who died when he was 15. Daniel, who Ray said he'd never met. Daniel, who had been coached by Ray years before I ever knew him. The phone almost slipped from my hand. I gripped it tighter, the beam shaking as my whole body started to tremble. Ray had lied to me, for years, about knowing Daniel, about this place, about everything. I backed away from the photo, my mind racing. Why would he lie? Why would he keep this secret? What else had he hidden from me? I turned to leave, to get out of this place and figure out what was happening. But as I did, my foot caught on something. I stumbled, and the flashlight beam swung wildly across the floor. It landed on a corner of the gym, a small area that had been kept cleaner than the rest. And in that corner was a sleeping bag, a camping stove, and a plastic crate filled with canned food. Someone had been living here, recently. I walked over slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I knelt down next to the sleeping bag and looked inside the crate. On top of the canned food was a notebook, old, worn, filled with handwriting I recognized. Ray's handwriting. I opened it to the first page. The date at the top was from 6 months ago, and the first line made me forget how to breathe. Daniel's death was my fault, and Marcus can never know the truth. I sat down hard on the floor, the notebook in my lap, and I started to read. And with every word, every confession, every buried secret that Ray had poured onto those pages, the man I thought I knew began to disappear, replaced by a stranger who had loved me enough to save me, but had been haunted by the ghosts of his mistakes every single day until his heart finally gave out under the weight of them. The funeral was over. Ray was in the ground, but the truth was just beginning to claw its way to the surface. I don't know how long I sat there on that dusty gym floor. Time stopped meaning anything. The rain hammered against the boarded windows. My phone buzzed with calls and texts that I ignored. The only thing that existed was Ray's handwriting and the terrible truth unfolding in my hands. The notebook was thick, maybe 100 pages, and every single one was filled. Some entries were short, just a few lines. Others went on for pages. But they all circled back to the same theme, the same wound that never healed, Daniel. I turned to the second page, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the notebook steady. March 15th, 6 months since I've been back to this place. I told myself I'd never return, that I'd sealed this chapter of my life shut, but I can't sleep anymore. The nightmares are getting worse. I see Daniel's face every time I close my eyes, so I came back. Cleaned out a corner, brought some supplies. If I'm going to be haunted, I might as well be haunted where it all happened. I looked around the gym with new eyes. This wasn't just an abandoned building. This was Ray's confession booth, his prison, the place where he came to punish himself for whatever happened to my brother. I kept reading. March 22nd. Marcus called today, wanted to talk about his contract extension. He sounded happy, confident, everything I hoped he'd become. And all I could think about was how I don't deserve to hear that happiness in his voice, how I built my redemption on top of a lie, how saving Marcus doesn't bring Daniel back. My throat tightened. I had called him that day. I remembered. We'd talked for an hour about the future, about my plans, about how grateful I was for everything he'd done for me. And the whole time, he was carrying this. April 3rd, I saw Marcus's mother at the grocery store today. She hugged me. Thanked me for being there for her son. Said I was the father Marcus never had. I couldn't look her in the eye. She doesn't know. She can never know. Because if she knew the truth, she'd realize that I'm the reason she only has one son left. I stopped reading, put the notebook down, pressed my palms against my eyes and tried to breathe. My mother. God. My mother. She loved Ray, trusted him completely, let him into our lives because she believed he was helping me, saving me from the streets that took Daniel. But what if Ray wasn't the savior we thought he was? What if he was the reason Daniel ended up on those streets in the first place? I forced myself to pick up the notebook again. I had to know, even if it destroyed everything. April 18th. The anniversary is coming up. 16 years since the night that changed everything. Since the night I made the decision that cost Daniel his life. I've rehearsed the conversation with Marcus 1,000 times in my head, how I'd tell him, what I'd say, but I'm a coward. I always have been, so I'll keep coaching him, keep pushing him, keep pretending that hard work and discipline can somehow balance the scales. 16 years ago. I did the math quickly in my head. April 18th. That was 2 days before Daniel died. 2 days before my brother walked out of our apartment at 10 o'clock at night and never came home. My hands were trembling as I turned to the next entry. The handwriting was messier here, more desperate. April 20th. 16 years. Daniel would be 31 now, maybe married, maybe with kids, maybe coaching his own team somewhere. But he's not. He's dead. And it's because I was arrogant. Because I thought I knew better. Because I pushed when I should have protected. I flipped through more pages, scanning for details, for the story, for the truth, and then I found it. An entry dated June 10th, 3 months ago. The handwriting was shaky, like Ray had been drinking or crying or both. I need to write this down, all of it, before I lose my nerve, before I convince myself again that some secrets are better left buried. Marcus deserves to know, even if it costs me everything. What followed was the longest entry in the entire notebook. 10 pages, single-spaced, every word a confession. I started reading and I couldn't stop. Daniel came to me in the summer of 1997. He was 13 years old, skinny, all elbows and attitude, but he could play. God, he could play. He had vision on the court that you can't teach. The kind of instinct that separates good players from great ones. I saw it immediately. His mother didn't want him playing organized ball. She was terrified of the gangs, the violence, the streets, and she had every right to be. Riverside was a war zone back then, but Daniel begged me, showed up at the gym every day for 2 weeks straight until I finally said yes. I should have listened to his mother. I should have sent him home, but I didn't, because I was building something. I had this team of kids from the neighborhood, and we were winning. We were getting attention. College scouts were starting to show up, and Daniel made us better. So I kept him on the team, told him to keep it quiet at home, told him we'd practice late after his mother went to work her night shift. It felt harmless, like I was giving him an opportunity his circumstances were trying to take away. For 2 years, it worked. We won championships. Daniel became one of the best guards in the city, and I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that I was saving him from the streets by keeping him in the gym. But the streets don't care about your intentions. There was this kid, Terrence Shaw, went by T-Shaw on the corners. He ran with the Riverside boys, one of the bigger crews in the area. T-Shaw had a younger brother, Malik, who played for a rival team, and Malik hated Daniel. Hated how good he was, hated how much attention he got. The rivalry spilled off the court, started with trash talk, then shoving matches, then threats. T-Shaw came to me one day, told me to keep Daniel away from his brother, said if Daniel embarrassed Malik again, there'd be consequences. I told him to get lost, that this was basketball, not gang business. I was so stupid. Championship game, April 1998. Daniel dropped 42 points. Destroyed Malik's team, made him look like he didn't belong on the same court. After the game, Malik and Daniel got into it. Real heated. Security had to separate them. I should have sent Daniel home with someone. Should have made sure he got back safe. But I was celebrating, taking photos, talking to scouts, being a coach who cared more about winning than protecting his players. Daniel left alone, walked home like he always did, said he'd be fine. 2 blocks from the gym, T-Shaw and 3 of his boys were waiting. They didn't shoot him over basketball. They shot him because I ignored a warning, because I put my pride and my program ahead of a 13-year-old kid's safety. Because I was too arrogant to believe that the streets could reach into my gym and take one of my players. Daniel died on the corner of Riverside and 5th, bled out before the ambulance arrived, and I was still at the gym when it happened, celebrating a championship that suddenly didn't mean anything. His mother found out first, showed up at the gym screaming. I'd never seen that kind of pain before, the kind that breaks you from the inside out. She blamed me, and she was right to. I shut down the program the next day, locked the gym, never coached in this neighborhood again. I couldn't. Every time I looked at these walls, I saw Daniel. Every time I touched a basketball, I felt his blood on my hands. I moved to a different part of the city, started over, told myself I'd never let this happen again, that I'd never let my ambition put another kid in danger. And then, 6 years later, Marcus showed up. I had to stop reading, put the notebook down, stand up, walk away. My legs barely held me. I stumbled to the center of the gym and fell to my knees on what used to be the three-point line. Daniel died 2 blocks from here, because Ray pushed too hard, because he ignored the danger, because he chose basketball over safety. And then Ray found me. Was I redemption, or was I just Ray's second chance to ease his guilt? I picked up the notebook again, kept reading through the tears that were blurring the words. When I first saw Marcus, I thought I was seeing a ghost. He looked so much like Daniel. Same eyes, same build, same way of moving. I asked around and found out he was Daniel's younger brother, the kid who survived. I told myself to walk away, that I'd already destroyed one family, that Marcus deserved better than a coach haunted by his past. But I couldn't do it, because Marcus was heading down the same path Daniel had been on. Streets pulling at him, violence waiting around every corner. And maybe, if I could save Marcus, it would mean something. Maybe it would balance the scales just a little bit. So I approached his mother, told her I wanted to coach Marcus. Didn't tell her I'd coached Daniel, didn't tell her what happened. Just said I saw potential and wanted to help. She said yes, because she was desperate, because she was working 3 jobs and couldn't watch him 24/7, because she needed someone to keep her last son alive. And I promised her I would. I promised I'd protect Marcus, that I'd never let what happened to Daniel happen to him. For years I kept that promise. I was careful, paranoid even. I never let Marcus walk home alone. Never let him hang around after practice. Never let him anywhere near Riverside Boulevard. I built walls around him made of discipline and structure and fear. And it worked. Marcus stayed safe, stayed focused, became everything I hoped he'd be. But I built it all on a lie. Because Marcus thinks I'm his mentor, his father figure, the man who believed in him when no one else did. He doesn't know that every time I push him harder, I'm seeing Daniel. Every time I yell at him for being lazy, I'm trying to outrun my guilt. Every time I tell him I'm proud of him, I'm really saying I'm sorry to the brother he lost. Marcus deserves the truth. But if I tell him, I lose him. And I can't lose him, because he's the only good thing I've ever done. The only life I've managed to save. So I'll keep lying. I'll keep coaching. I'll keep carrying this weight until it finally crushes me. And when I'm gone, maybe this notebook will be enough. Maybe Marcus will read it and understand. Maybe he'll forgive me. Or maybe he'll realize that the man who saved him is the same man who killed his brother. And maybe that's exactly what I deserve. The notebook fell from my hands. I couldn't hold it anymore. Couldn't hold anything. I collapsed forward, my forehead pressed against the dirty gym floor, and I screamed, just screamed until my throat was raw and my voice was gone. Ray had known Daniel, had coached him, had loved him, and had gotten him killed, and then he'd found me, not because he wanted to help me, but because he needed to ease his conscience, because saving me was the only way he could live with himself after failing Daniel. Everything I thought I knew about Ray, about our relationship, about why he chose me, it was all built on a foundation of guilt and lies. I don't know how long I stayed there on that floor. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Eventually, I heard my phone ringing, again and again. I ignored it until it finally stopped. Then I heard footsteps. I lifted my head and saw someone standing in the doorway, backlit by the gray afternoon light. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. It was my mother. She walked into the gym slowly, her shoes echoing on the hardwood. She was still wearing her black dress from the funeral. Her face was wet with tears. Marcus, she said softly, what are you doing here? I couldn't answer, couldn't find the word. She saw the notebook on the floor, saw my face, and something in her expression changed. The confusion became understanding. The concern became something heavier, something that looked like resignation. You found it, she whispered. You found Ray's truth. You knew? My voice came out broken, shattered. She closed her eyes, nodded once. You knew Ray coached Daniel? You knew what happened? Not at first, she said. Not for years, but eventually. Yes, I figured it out. When? She walked closer and sat down on the floor beside me, picked up the notebook, ran her fingers over Ray's handwriting. About 5 years ago, I found an old photo in Ray's wallet, Daniel's team photo. He didn't know I saw it, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So I asked him, and he told me everything. And you still let him coach me? Still let him in our lives? After what he did to Daniel? She turned to look at me, and the pain in her eyes was so deep it hurt to see. Marcus, Ray didn't kill your brother. The streets killed him. The same streets that were trying to kill you. And Ray, he spent every day of his life trying to make sure you didn't end up like Daniel. He wasn't perfect. God knows he wasn't perfect. But he loved you. And he saved you. That's the truth, too. He lied to me, Mom. About everything. He protected you from a pain you didn't need to carry. There's a difference. Is there? She didn't answer. Just sat there beside me while the rain continued to fall outside. Finally, she stood up and held out her hand. Come on, baby. Let's go home. I can't. Not yet. I need to understand. Understand what? Ray's gone. The past is dead. And you have a life to live. Don't throw that away chasing ghosts. But I was already chasing them. Had been since the moment that woman handed me the key. Who was she? I asked. The woman at the funeral. The one who gave me this. My mother's face went still. What woman? 50s. Black dress. Said she owed Ray a debt. She gave me the key to this place. Told me to come here. Who was she, Mom? I don't know. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. She looked away. And when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Her name is Patricia Shaw, Terrence Shaw's mother, the boy who killed Daniel. The world tilted sideways. What? After Daniel died, after T. Shaw got arrested, his mother came to see Ray. She blamed herself, said she'd failed her son, said she understood what Ray was going through because she'd lost her boy too, just in a different way. They stayed in touch over the years, and Ray, he helped her. Sent her money, helped get T. Shaw a lawyer, visited him in prison. Ray helped the person who killed Daniel. Ray helped a mother who lost her son to the streets. Same as me. I couldn't process it, couldn't fit it into any framework that made sense. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were 12 years old and you'd just lost your brother. Because knowing Ray's history wouldn't have changed anything except to give you more pain. Because sometimes, Marcus, love means carrying secrets so the people you love don't have to. She picked up the notebook and held it out to me. Take this. Read it. Understand it. But don't let it destroy the memory of a man who spent 20 years of his life making sure you survived. Ray made mistakes, terrible ones. But he also made sure you got out. That means something. I took the notebook, held it against my chest. I don't know how to forgive this. Then don't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But don't let it erase the good he did either. Ray gave you a future. Honor that. Even if you can't forgive him. She kissed my forehead and walked toward the door, paused in the doorway and looked back. Come home when you're ready. I'll have food waiting. Then she was gone, and I was alone again with Ray's confessions and my shattered understanding of everything I'd believed about my life. I stayed in that gym until the sun went down, read every page of the notebook, every entry, every apology. Every moment of anguish Ray had poured onto those pages, and slowly, painfully, I started to understand. Ray hadn't saved me to ease his guilt. He'd saved me because he couldn't save Daniel, because he'd learned from his mistakes, because he'd spent 20 years making sure I didn't end up bleeding out on a street corner like my brother. It didn't make the lies okay, didn't erase the betrayal, but it made them human, made Ray human, flawed, broken, trying to do right by a boy he'd failed, even if it meant lying to the boy he raised. As I locked up the gym and walked back to my car, I realized something. Ray had died with this secret. He'd carried it to his grave, but he'd left me the key because he knew I'd need the truth eventually. That I couldn't move forward without understanding where I came from. This wasn't just his confession, it was his final lesson. That the past never really dies. That guilt doesn't fade. That redemption isn't about erasing your mistakes. It's about living with them while trying to do better. I sat in my car for a long time, watching the rain blur the windshield. My phone was full of messages. Kevin asking about meetings, Troy asking if I was okay, teammates, reporters, sponsors, all of them wanting a piece of Marcus Taylor, NBA rising star. None of them knowing that Marcus Taylor was built on a foundation of lies and second chances and one man's desperate attempt to balance the scales. I started the engine, pulled away from Riverside Boulevard, and as I drove through the rain toward my mother's house, I made a decision. I was going to find Patricia Shaw, the woman who gave me the key, the woman who knew Ray's truth because she lived her own version of it. And I was going to ask her the question that was burning through my mind. If Ray could forgive the mother of the boy who killed Daniel, could I forgive Ray for the lies that saved me? Maybe she'd have an answer, or maybe I'd find out that some questions don't have answers at all, only choices. Finding Patricia Shaw wasn't hard. In the age of social media and public records, nobody stays hidden for long, especially not someone who'd spent the last 16 years visiting her son in prison. She lived in a small house on the east side, about 30 minutes from where I grew up. The neighborhood was quiet, working class, the kind of place where people mind their business and survive one day at a time. I sat in my car across the street for 20 minutes before I worked up the courage to knock on her door. Kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd ask the questions burning through my mind. But every version sounded wrong, angry, or desperate, or accusatory. Finally, I just got out of the car and walked up to her front porch. The house was tidy, small garden in front with flowers that looked recently watered, a welcome mat that actually looked welcoming. Nothing about it suggested the woman inside had raised a son who'd taken someone's life. But then again, what does that kind of house look like? I knocked, waited, heard footsteps inside. The door opened, and there she was, Patricia Shaw, same woman from the funeral. But now, in the afternoon light, I could see her more clearly. She looked tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones and never leaves. But her eyes were kind, sad, but kind. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Marcus," she said softly, "I wondered when you'd come. Can we talk?" She nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." The inside of her house was as neat as the outside. Family photos on the walls, a worn couch, a small TV, the smell of coffee and something baking. It felt like a home. Like a place where someone had tried very hard to hold on to normalcy despite everything. She led me to the kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if I wanted any. We sat at a small wooden table by the window. "You read the notebook," she said, not a question. "Every word. Then you know." "I know what Ray wrote. I know what he believed. But I don't know the whole truth, and I think you do." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup and stared into it like she was reading tea leaves. "What do you want to know, Marcus?" "Everything. How you know Ray. Why he helped you. Why you gave me that key. All of it." She took a deep breath, let it out slowly. "My son Terrence was 17 when he killed your brother. Just 17. People think that's old enough to know better, and maybe it is. But 17 is still a child, still someone who can be saved. He murdered Daniel. Yes, he did. And I will carry that for the rest of my life. Just like Ray carried it. Just like your mother carries it. Just like you carry it now." Her voice was steady, not defensive, just honest. "After it happened, after Terrence got arrested, I wanted to die. I thought about it every day for months. I'd raised him alone after his father left, worked 2 jobs, tried to keep him in school, away from the streets. But I failed, and because I failed, another mother's child was dead." She looked up at me then, and I saw the same pain in her eyes that I'd seen in my mother's, the same weight. "I went to your brother's funeral, stood in the back where nobody would see me, watched your mother cry, watched you, this little 12-year-old boy, try to be strong, and I knew that my failure had destroyed your family. So why did you go to Ray?" "I didn't. Not at first. Ray came to me. That stopped me." "What?" "About 3 months after Daniel died, Ray showed up at my door. I thought he was going to kill me, thought he was going to make me pay for what Terrence did. But he didn't. He just stood there on my porch and asked if we could talk. She stood up and walked to a drawer, pulled out an envelope, old, worn. She handed it to me. Inside was a letter, Ray's handwriting. He wrote this after our first conversation, said he needed to put his thoughts on paper to make sense of them. He gave it to me years later when Terrence got parole, said I might need it someday. I unfolded the letter. It was dated September 1998, 5 months after Daniel died. The words swam in front of my eyes, but I forced myself to read. Patricia, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to give it to you, but I need to write it down, need to make sense of what happened and my part in it. Your son killed Daniel. That's a fact. But I put Daniel in the position to be killed. That's also a fact. I've spent months trying to figure out who's more guilty, the boy who pulled the trigger or the man who loaded the gun, and I've realized it's the wrong question. The real question is, what do we do now? We can't bring Daniel back. We can't undo what Terrence did. We can't rewind time and make different choices. All we can do is live with what happened and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. I've been angry at you, at your son, at the streets, at God, at myself. But anger doesn't heal anything. It just burns until there's nothing left. So I'm making a choice. I'm choosing to help you. Not because I forgive what happened. Not because I think helping you will somehow balance the scales. But because I've realized that destroying another mother won't bring Daniel back. And maybe, if we can save Terrence, if we can help him become something better than what he was at 17, then Daniel's death might mean something. This isn't redemption. It's just an old man trying to find a reason to keep breathing. Ray. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. My hands were shaking. He helped you? Patricia nodded. Paid for Terrence's lawyer, visited him in prison, wrote him letters, talked to him about responsibility and consequences and becoming a man instead of staying a boy. And slowly, over years, Terrence changed. He got his GED, started taking college courses, joined a restorative justice program where he talked to at-risk kids about his mistakes. Why would Ray do that? Why would he help the person who killed Daniel? Because Ray understood something that most people don't. That punishment doesn't heal anything. That vengeance doesn't bring back the dead. That the only way forward is to try to create something good out of something terrible. She reached across the table and took my hand. Hers was warm, calloused from years of hard work. Marcus, Ray didn't help Terrence to ease his guilt about Daniel. He helped him because he saw what I saw. A boy who made a terrible choice but wasn't beyond saving. And if Ray could save Terrence, maybe it meant the streets hadn't won completely. And you? How did you deal with knowing your son killed someone? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I didn't. Not for a long time. I spent years wishing Terrence had never been born, wishing I'd never brought him into a world where he could hurt someone like that. But Ray taught me something. He taught me that my son's worst moment doesn't have to be his defining moment, that people can grow, change, become better. Where is Terrence now? He got out 3 years ago. Good behavior. Parole. He lives in Ohio now, works at a community center teaching kids basketball and life skills. He's married, has a daughter, and every day he carries what he did, but he uses that weight to help others not make the same mistakes. I pulled my hand back, stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the quiet street. I don't know if I can forgive this. I'm not asking you to. Neither would Ray. Forgiveness isn't something you can force. It's something that either grows or doesn't. Ray lied to me for 20 years. Ray protected you for 20 years. There's a difference, is there? Because right now, it feels like my whole life was built on a lie. She stood and walked over to stand beside me. Your life was built on Ray's love for you, on his determination to make sure you didn't end up like Daniel, on his refusal to let the streets take another boy. Yes, he lied about knowing Daniel, but he told the truth every day in how he coached you, how he protected you, how he pushed you to be better. That wasn't a lie, Marcus. That was real. I turned to face her. Why did you give me the key? Why now? Because Ray asked me to. A year ago, he came to me and said he was tired, that carrying the secret was killing him, but he was too afraid to tell you himself. So he asked me to give you the key if anything happened to him. Said you deserved to know the truth. even if it meant you'd hate him. I don't hate him, but you're hurt, confused, angry, and that's okay. Ray expected that. He knew what telling you would cost, but he also knew you couldn't move forward without understanding where you came from. She walked back to the table and picked up an old photo album, brought it over and opened it to a page marked with a ribbon. This is Terrence at 17, the year he killed Daniel. The photo showed a skinny kid with hard eyes and defensive posture. He looked angry at the world. She flipped a few pages. This is Terrence at 30, after Ray had been working with him for years. Same face, but different, softer, sadder, more human. She flipped to the last page. And this is Terrence today, with his wife and daughter. The man in the photo was smiling, holding a little girl on his shoulders. He looked peaceful, like he'd found a way to live with what he'd done. Ray helped make that possible, Patricia said quietly. He took the worst thing that ever happened and tried to create something good from it, not to erase it, but to honor Daniel's memory by making sure no other kid ended up like Terrence or Daniel. I stared at the photo for a long time. I need to ask you something, I finally said. Anything. Do you think Ray really loved me? Or was I just his way of dealing with guilt? She closed the album and looked at me with eyes that had seen too much pain and somehow still held kindness. Marcus, I watched Ray with you for years, at your games, at practices. He was there for every moment, and I can tell you, without any doubt, that man loved you. Maybe it started as guilt. Maybe it started as redemption, but it became real. It became a father loving his son. Don't let the beginning take away from what it became. How do I move forward from this? The same way Ray did, the same way I did, the same way Terrence did. You acknowledge the pain. You sit with it. You let it change you. And then you decide what kind of person you want to be on the other side of it. My phone buzzed. Kevin calling again. I ignored it. Can I ask you something now? Patricia said. Sure. What are you going to do with what you know? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I don't know. Will you tell people? Your mother? Your teammates? The media? The thought hadn't even occurred to me until she said it. The media would have a field day with this story. Rising NBA star discovers his legendary coach got his brother killed. It would be everywhere. My face. Ray's face. Daniel's name dragged through the headlines. No, I said firmly. This stays private. Ray deserves that. Daniel deserves that. She smiled sadly. Ray said you'd say that. He said you were better than him. Kinder. Stronger. That's why he never told you. He was afraid his past would taint your future. It might anyway. Or it might make you more human, more compassionate, more aware that everyone is carrying something. She walked me to the door. Before I left, she handed me a small business card. That's Terrence's number. In Ohio. If you ever want to talk to him, hear his side. Ask him anything. He said he'd answer your call. Anytime. I took the card. Stared at it. I don't know if I can. That's okay too. But if you ever need to hear from someone else who's lived with guilt and tried to become better, he's there. I nodded. Put the card in my pocket. Thank you for talking to me. For being honest. Thank you for coming. Ray would be proud of you. For seeking the truth instead of running from it. I walked back to my car, sat there for a while, thought about everything Patricia had said, about Ray helping Terrence, about redemption not being about erasing mistakes but learning from them, about love starting as guilt but becoming real. My phone rang again. This time it was Troy. I answered. Where are you, man? Everyone's looking for you. I'm dealing with some things. You okay? Not really, but I will be. Need me to come get you? Take you somewhere? No. I just need some time. Take all the time you need. But Marcus? Yeah? Whatever you're dealing with, you don't have to deal with it alone. That's what teammates are for. I felt my throat tighten. Thanks, Troy. Anytime, brother. I hung up and started driving. Not toward home. Not toward the gym. Just driving through the city, past the neighborhoods where I grew up, past the courts where Ray first found me, past the streets that could have swallowed me whole if Ray hadn't pulled me out. And as I drove, I started to understand something. Ray had saved me. Not perfectly, not without lies, but he'd saved me. And maybe that was enough. Maybe I didn't need him to be perfect. Maybe I just needed him to have been there when I needed someone. I thought about my own career, my own choices, The endorsement deals I'd signed, the lifestyle I'd built, the person I was becoming. Would I have any of this without Ray? No. Would I even be alive without Ray? Maybe not. Did that make the lies okay? No. But did it mean Ray's love was real despite the lies? Yes. I pulled over at a park, walked to a basketball court where some kids were playing pickup, sat on a bench and watched them, saw myself in them, saw Daniel, saw Ray's legacy in every crossover and every jump shot. One of the kids recognized me, came running over. "Yo, you're Marcus Taylor." "Yeah." "Man, you're sick. Can you show me something?" I looked at this kid, 12 years old, full of hope and potential, standing right where I stood 20 years ago. "Sure," I said. "Let's go." For the next hour, I played with those kids, taught them moves, talked to them about discipline and hard work and staying focused. And as I did, I heard Ray's voice in my own, saw his coaching in my movements, felt his legacy living through me. This was what Ray had given me. Not just basketball skills, but the ability to pour into others the way he'd poured into me. The ability to see potential and nurture it. The ability to be present for someone who needed guidance. The lies hurt. The betrayal stung. But the love was real. And maybe that was the lesson. That people are complicated. That we hurt the ones we love even when we're trying to save them. That redemption isn't clean or simple. That forgiveness is a choice we make every day. When I finally left that court, the sun was setting. The kids thanked me and asked when I'd come back. I told them soon, and I meant it. I drove to my mother's house, found her in the kitchen, exactly where she said she'd be. Food waiting. She looked up when I walked in, searched my face. "You okay, baby?" "I talked to Patricia Shaw." She put down the spoon she was holding. And I think I'm starting to understand." She came over and hugged me, held me like she used to when I was 12 and scared of everything. "Ray loved you, Marcus. Never doubt that." "I know, Mom, I know." We ate dinner together, talked about small things, normal things, let the weight of the day settle into something manageable. Before I left, I asked her one more question. "Did Daniel know how much you loved him?" She smiled through fresh tears. "I told him every day. Even when he rolled his eyes and said I was being corny, I told him. That's what matters then. What matters? That the people we love know we love them. Even if we're not perfect. Even if we make mistakes. As long as they know." She kissed my forehead. "Ray knew you loved him, Marcus. Even if you never said the words, he knew." I drove home that night with Ray's notebook on the passenger seat and Terrence's business card in my pocket. I didn't have all the answers, didn't have everything figured out, but I had the truth, the whole messy, painful, complicated truth. And somehow, that was enough, for now. 3 weeks passed before I touched Terrence Shaw's business card again. 3 weeks of going through the motions. Practice, games, meetings with Kevin about endorsements I didn't care about. Interviews where I smiled and said the right things while feeling hollow inside. My teammates noticed. Troy asked if I was okay at least a dozen times. I kept telling him I was fine, just dealing with the loss of my coach. He didn't push. Good teammates know when to give you space. But the space wasn't helping. The more time that passed, the heavier Ray's notebook felt. I'd brought it home from Riverside Gym and kept it in my nightstand drawer. Some nights I'd pull it out and read random entries. Other nights I couldn't bring myself to open the drawer at all. The card stayed in my wallet. I'd take it out sometimes when I was alone, stare at the number, try to imagine what I'd say if I called. But I never got past the first few words before fear or anger or confusion stopped me. What do you say to the man who killed your brother? How do you start that conversation? The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. We had an away game in Chicago, won by 15. I had 26 points but played on autopilot the entire time. After the game, I sat in the locker room long after everyone else had left, still in my uniform, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. "Thinking about you tonight. Love you, baby." Simple, direct, the way she always was. I texted back. "Love you too." Then I pulled out the card, stared at it under the fluorescent lights. If Ray could forgive Terrence enough to help him, could I at least hear his story? If my mother could lose Daniel and still find the strength to love me through everything, could I find the strength to make this call? I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. It rang 4 times. I was about to hang up when someone answered. Hello? The voice was deep, cautious, like someone who'd learned to be careful about phone calls. Is this Terrence Shaw? Silence for a moment. Then, who's asking? Marcus Taylor, Daniel's brother. I heard him take a sharp breath. Another long pause. Marcus, I didn't think you'd call. Neither did I. Your mother gave you my number? Patricia did. Your mother. She said you'd talk to me. Yeah, I will. Give me a second. I heard movement. A door closing. Then his voice again, quieter now. I'm here, I'm listening. But I didn't know what to say. Now that I had him on the phone, all the questions I'd rehearsed disappeared. I don't know why I called, I finally admitted. That's okay. I'm glad you did. Are you? Yes. I've wanted to talk to you for 16 years. Never thought I'd get the chance. Why would you want to talk to me? Because you're the one I hurt the most. You and your mother. Daniel died, but you had to live with that loss. And I never got to tell you how sorry I am. The words hit me harder than I expected. I gripped the phone tighter. Sorry doesn't bring him back. No, it doesn't. Nothing does. But it's still true. I'm sorry, Marcus, for taking your brother, for destroying your family, for being the reason you grew up without him. I'm sorry. I could hear the weight in his voice, the years of carrying it, the same weight I'd heard in Ray's notebook entries. Ray helped you. He saved me. Not in the way he saved you, but he saved me from becoming a monster, from dying in prison, angry and bitter and convinced the world owed me something. He taught me how to live with what I did instead of running from it. How do you live with it? Badly most days, but I try. I work with kids, teach them basketball, talk to them about choices and consequences, try to make sure they don't end up like me. It doesn't erase what I did, but it's something. I stood up and started pacing the locker room. Did you know Daniel before you killed him? Not really. I knew of him. Everybody did. He was one of the best players in the city. My brother Malik played against him, hated him for being better. I let Malik's hatred become my hatred. Thought I was being a good big brother by defending him. Didn't realize I was just feeding into the poison. Why did you shoot him? He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Because I was 17 and stupid and full of rage that had nothing to do with Daniel. My father had left. My mother was working herself to death. I was running with guys who made me feel powerful when everything else made me feel powerless. And when Malik came to me crying about how Daniel embarrassed him, I saw a chance to prove I mattered, that I was someone to be respected. So you killed him. So I killed him. And the second I pulled that trigger, I realized I'd made the worst mistake of my life. But there's no taking it back. No rewind. Daniel was dead, and I was the reason. And I've had to live with that every single day since. I sat back down on the bench, put my head in my hands. Ray wrote about you. In his notebook, he said helping you was his way of making Daniel's death mean something. Ray told me the same thing. Said he couldn't bring Daniel back, but he could try to make sure I didn't waste the life I still had. At first, I thought he was crazy. Why would the coach of the kid I killed want to help me? But he kept showing up, kept writing, kept pushing me to be better. And eventually, I started to believe him, that maybe I could become something other than the worst thing I'd ever done. Are you? Something other than that? Some days, on good days, I'm a husband, a father, a coach, a man trying to do right by the world. On bad days, I'm still the 17-year-old kid who took a life and can never give it back. But Ray taught me that both things can be true, that I can carry what I did while still moving forward. I thought about Ray's notebook, about his guilt over Daniel, about how he'd carried it while still coaching me, still living, still trying. Ray lied to me, I said, for 20 years, about knowing Daniel, about everything. I know, he told me, said it was eating him alive, but he was too afraid you'd hate him if you knew the truth. I don't hate him, but you're hurt. Yeah, that's fair. Ray wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, big ones, but he loved you, Marcus. He talked about you constantly, how proud he was, how you were his second chance at getting it right. You were his redemption. I didn't ask to be anyone's redemption. No one does. But sometimes that's what love is. Someone seeing in you the chance to be better than they were. And Ray saw that in you, just like he saw it in me. I stood up again, started pacing. Do you have kids? A daughter. She's 3. What's her name? Daniela. My breath caught. You named her after my brother? Yes. My wife and I decided that if we ever had kids, we'd honor the life I took by giving our daughter his name. It's a small thing. Doesn't fix anything. But it's our way of making sure Daniel isn't forgotten. I had to sit down again. The room was spinning. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it. I'm not telling you to forgive me. I'm just telling you that Daniel's memory lives on. In me. In my daughter. In the kids I coach and the life I try to live. He's not just a tragedy. He's a reminder of what's at stake when we make choices. Did Ray ever meet your daughter? Once. About 6 months before he died. He came to Ohio and met her. Held her. Cried. Said she was beautiful. Said Daniel would have been a great uncle. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They came hard and fast. I miss him, I choked out. I miss Daniel, and I miss Ray, and I don't know how to make sense of any of this. You don't have to make sense of it right now. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, neither does forgiveness. You're allowed to be confused, angry, sad, all of it. Did you ever talk to my mother? No. Ray asked if I wanted to, offered to set it up, but I couldn't. I couldn't face her. Couldn't look her in the eye after what I took from her. Some bridges are too burned to cross. She knows about you, about Ray helping you. Does she hate me? I don't think she knows how to feel about you. Same as me. That's fair. We sat in silence for a moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end, could hear the weight of everything we were carrying. Can I ask you something, Marcus? Yeah. Why did you really call? What do you need from me? I thought about it, really thought. I need to know if Ray was right, if helping you was worth it, if you actually changed, or if you're just good at saying the right things. Fair question. I can't prove it to you over the phone, but I can tell you this. I wake up every morning and make a choice, to be better than I was, to honor the life I took by living mine with purpose. Some days I succeed, some days I fail, but I keep making the choice. That's all Ray asked of me, to keep choosing to be better. And you think that's enough? No, it's not enough. It'll never be enough, but it's all I have. I wiped my face, took a deep breath. Ray used to tell me that basketball was about making the next right play, not dwelling on the last mistake, just focusing on the next opportunity to do something good. He told me the same thing, said life was the same way. Do you believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? I looked around the empty locker room, thought about all the games I'd played, all the mistakes I'd made on the court, all the times Ray had pulled me aside and told me to forget what just happened and focus on what's next. I need some time, I said, to process this, to figure out what I think about everything. Take all the time you need, I'll be here. And Marcus? Yeah? Thank you. For calling, for listening, for not hanging up on me. It means more than you know. I didn't do it for you. I know, but it still means something. I hung up without saying goodbye. Sat there in the silence of the locker room with my phone in my hand and too many thoughts in my head. Troy walked back in, probably coming to check on me. You good, man? I just talked to the guy who killed my brother. He stopped in his tracks. What? Long story, but yeah, that just happened. He sat down next to me, didn't say anything for a minute. Then, how do you feel? I don't know. Confused, angry, sad, grateful that he answered, guilty that I called, all of it. That's a lot. Yeah. You need anything? No, I just need to sit here for a minute. Want me to sit with you? Yeah, that'd be good. So we sat there together, my teammate and me, not talking, just being present, the way Ray used to be present, the way my mother was present, the way people who love you are present when you're falling apart. After a while, Troy spoke up. Whatever you're dealing with, Marcus, you're not alone. You know that, right? I'm starting to. Good, because we got your back. Always. We sat there until the arena staff started turning off lights and kicking people out. Then we grabbed our stuff and headed to the team bus. On the ride back to the hotel, I stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, thought about Ray, about Daniel, about Terrence, about all the ways lives intersect and change each other. Ray had saved me by lying to me, protected me by hiding the truth, loved me by carrying a burden I didn't know existed. Was that wrong? Maybe. Was it human? Definitely. Could I forgive it? I didn't know yet, but I was starting to understand that forgiveness wasn't about saying what Ray did was okay. It was about accepting that he was human, flawed, trying his best with the tools he had, just like me, just like Terrence, just like all of us stumbling through life trying not to hurt the people we love while knowing we inevitably will. Back in my hotel room, I pulled out Ray's notebook one more time, flipped to the last entry, the one dated 3 days before he died. I'm tired. My heart is giving out. The doctors say I need to slow down. But how do you slow down when you've spent 20 years running from ghosts? Marcus is thriving. That's all that matters. He's going to be okay without me. Better than okay. He's going to be great. I wish I could tell him the truth myself, face to face, man to man. But I'm a coward. Always have been. So I'll leave him the key and the notebook and hope he understands. Hope he knows that everything I did because I loved him. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but real. The realest thing in my life. If you're reading this, Marcus, then I'm gone, and I'm sorry for the lies, for the secrets, for not being brave enough to tell you everything while I was still here. But I'm not sorry for saving you. I'm not sorry for pushing you. I'm not sorry for loving you like you were my own son, because you were, you are, and wherever I am now, I'm proud of you. Make the next right play, kid. Always make the next right play. Love. Coach. I closed the notebook and set it on the nightstand. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was 12 years old. I prayed, not to God. I still wasn't sure about God, but to Ray, to Daniel, to whoever was listening. I don't know how to do this, I whispered into the darkness. Don't know how to forgive or move on or make sense of any of it. But I'm trying. I'm making the choice to try. That's all I can do right now. So if you're out there, Coach, help me make the next right play. Because I'm lost, and I don't know what comes next. The room stayed silent. No answers came. But somehow, saying the words out loud made them feel less heavy. I could carry this. Maybe not easily, maybe not gracefully, but I could carry it. Because Ray had taught me how to carry weight, how to push through pain, how to keep moving forward even when everything in you wanted to quit. He'd taught me by example. By carrying his own weight for 20 years while coaching me to be strong enough to carry mine. I fell asleep with the notebook on the nightstand and Terrence's card back in my wallet, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without nightmares. 6 months later, I found myself standing outside Riverside Gym again, but this time I wasn't alone. Troy stood beside me, holding a toolbox. Kevin was there too, surprisingly, along with my mother and a dozen volunteers from the community center. Even some of my teammates had shown up, ready to work. We were here to rebuild. The decision hadn't come overnight. It came slowly, over weeks and months of sitting with everything I'd learned, of reading Ray's notebook over and over until I understood not just what happened, but why, of talking to my mother late into the night about forgiveness and legacy and what we owe the people who save us, of making peace with the fact that Ray was both the man who got Daniel killed and the man who kept me alive. Both things were true. Both things mattered, and I had to decide what to do with that truth. The answer came to me during a game. We were down by 8 with 3 minutes left, and I made a terrible turnover. The kind of mistake that can cost you everything. I stood there frozen for a second, replaying it in my head, and then I heard Ray's voice, clear as day. Make the next right play. So I did. Stole the ball on defense. Hit a 3. Assisted on the next possession. We won by 2. After the game, I realized something. Ray had spent 20 years making the next right play. He couldn't fix what happened to Daniel. Couldn't undo the mistakes. But he could make the next right play. And the next. And the next. He could save me. And now it was my turn to make the next right play. So here we were, at Riverside Gym, ready to turn it into something new. The plan was simple. Clean it out, renovate it, turn it into a community center and youth basketball program. Free for any kid who needed it. No fees, no exclusions, just a safe place to play and learn and grow. We'd call it the Daniel and Ray Henderson Youth Center. Both names, both legacies, together. My mother had cried when I told her the idea, said Daniel would have loved it, that Ray would have too. I wasn't so sure Ray would have felt he deserved it, but that was the point. This wasn't about what Ray deserved. It was about what the kids in this neighborhood deserved. A chance, a safe place, someone who believed in them. The same things Ray gave me. We spent that whole day cleaning, hauling out trash, ripping down old posters, scrubbing floors. By evening, the place looked different, still broken but with potential, like it was ready for a second chance. As the sun started to set, everyone else filtered out. My mother kissed my cheek and told me she was proud. Troy clapped me on the shoulder and said he'd be back tomorrow. Kevin, surprisingly emotional, said this was the best thing I'd done with my platform. Eventually, it was just me in the empty gym, standing at center court, holding a basketball I'd brought from home, one of the last ones Ray ever gave me. I dribbled it a few times. The sound echoed through the space, familiar, comforting. I closed my eyes, and I could see them. Daniel, young and full of potential. Ray, coaching him the way he'd later coach me. Both of them here in this space before everything went wrong. I wish I'd known you together, I said out loud. I wish I'd seen what you had before it all fell apart. The gym stayed silent. I'm going to make this place mean something again, for both of you, for all the kids who need what I needed, a chance. I took a shot from the three-point line. It rattled around the rim and dropped through. Make the next right play. I heard footsteps behind me, turned to see a figure in the doorway. For a moment, my heart stopped. The silhouette looked so much like Ray that I almost called out his name. But as the person stepped into the fading light, I saw it wasn't Ray. It was Terrence Shaw. We stood there, 20 feet apart, looking at each other. I hadn't seen him in person since I was 12 years old, since the trial. Since he was sentenced to 15 years for manslaughter, he looked different. Older, obviously, but also softer. Like the hard edges prison gives you had been worn down by time and effort. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I hope it's okay that I came. How did you know I'd be here?" "Your mother called me, told me about the center, asked if I'd want to be involved. I told her I'd think about it. Then I drove here from Ohio, sat in my car for 2 hours, trying to decide if I should come in." "What made you decide to?" "I figured you'd either tell me to leave or you'd hear me out. Either way, I owed it to you to try." I picked up the basketball, held it against my hip. "You drove 8 hours to get here?" 10, actually. Hit traffic. That's a long drive to potentially get rejected. You're worth a long drive. This project is worth it. Daniel's memory is worth it. I bounced the ball a few times, tried to process having him here, in the flesh. Not just a voice on a phone, but a real person standing in the same space where his choices destroyed my family. "Why did my mother call you?" She said she's been thinking a lot about forgiveness lately, about how holding on to anger was keeping her from healing. She said she wanted to do what Ray did, try to create something good from something terrible, and she thought having me involved might help. Not for me, but for her, to prove she could let go of the hate. "And what did you say?" "I said I didn't deserve her forgiveness." She said that was the point, that forgiveness isn't about deserving it, it's about choosing peace over pain. I walked over to the bleachers and sat down. Terrence stayed where he was, giving me space. "I've been trying to figure out if I can forgive you," I said, "or forgive Ray, or forgive anyone, and I keep coming back to the same question. What does forgiveness even mean? I don't know if I'm the right person to ask." "You're the only person who's lived through this from your side, so yeah, you're exactly the person to ask." He walked over slowly and sat on the bleachers a few feet away, not too close, respectful of the distance I needed. "I think forgiveness means accepting that what happened can't be changed, but how you move forward can be. It doesn't mean forgetting, doesn't mean saying it was okay, just means you're not going to let it destroy you." "Did you forgive yourself?" "No, I don't think I ever will, but I've learned to live with what I did, to use it as fuel to be better, to make sure my daughter grows up with a father who understands consequences and teaches her to make better choices than I did. Ray wrote about you in his notebook, said helping you was his way of honoring Daniel. He told me the same thing, said if he could help me become a man who contributed instead of destroyed, then Daniel's death would have meaning beyond tragedy." "Do you think it worked?" Terrence was quiet for a long time. "I think I'm better than I was at 17. I think I've helped some kids avoid the mistakes I made. I think my daughter will grow up knowing right from wrong because I taught her through my failures. But I don't know if that's enough to give Daniel's death meaning. That's not my call to make. Whose call is it? Yours? Your mother's? Anyone who loved Daniel? You get to decide if what I've become matters. I just have to keep trying to become it." I stood up and walked back to center court. Terrence stayed on the bleachers. "I've been thinking about what Ray would want," I said. "If he were here right now, what would he tell me to do? What do you think he'd say?" "Make the next right play." That was his answer to everything. Don't dwell on the past. Don't worry about the future. Just make the next right play. And what's the next right play? I turned to look at Terrence. "I think it's letting you help. Not because you deserve it. Not because I've forgiven you. But because kids in this neighborhood need good coaches. Need people who understand consequences. Need to hear from someone who made the worst possible choice and has spent every day since trying to make better ones." His eyes widened. "You want me to coach here? I want you to be part of what we're building, to help make sure no kid ends up like Daniel, or like you. To use your story to save lives instead of taking them." "Marcus, I don't know if I can. Being here in this place where it all started, that's exactly why you should be here, because you understand what's at stake better than anyone." He stood up, walked toward me, stopped about 10 feet away. "If I do this, I need you to know something. I'm not doing it to ease my guilt. That'll never go away. I'm doing it because you're right, because Ray was right, because the only way forward is to keep making the next right play." Then we're on the same page. I held out the basketball. "You remember how to play?" A small smile crossed his face, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. "Yeah, I remember." I passed him the ball. He caught it, held it like it was something precious. "Ray used to make me run drills for hours," he said. "Said basketball was about discipline and focus, about making good decisions under pressure." He told me the same thing. He was a good coach. He was a complicated man who tried his best. That's all any of us can be. Terrence took a shot. It swished through the net. "Not bad for a 33-year-old ex-con," he said. "Not bad at all." We shot around for a while. Didn't talk much, just played. And for those few minutes, it felt almost normal, like we were just two guys who loved basketball, sharing a court. But we weren't. We were the brother of a victim and the man who created that victim. We were two sides of a tragedy trying to figure out if healing was possible. As the last light faded from the windows, we stopped playing, sat on the bleachers together, still keeping some distance, but together. "Can I ask you something?" Terrence said. "Yeah. Do you think Daniel would want this? This center? His name on the wall? Me being part of it?" I thought about my brother, about the kid I barely got to know, about the potential that died with him. I think Daniel would want kids to be safe, to have chances, to not die on street corners. If this center does that, then yeah, I think he'd want it, even the complicated parts. Thank you for giving me a chance to be part of something good. Don't thank me yet. You're going to work your ass off. These kids deserve the best we can give them. I wouldn't expect anything less. We sat in silence as darkness filled the gym. Finally, Terrence stood up. "I should get a hotel, get some rest before the real work starts tomorrow. There's a decent place about 10 minutes from here. I'll text you the address. Thanks, Marcus, for everything." He started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "One more thing. My daughter, Daniela. When she's old enough, I'm going to bring her here. Tell her about her namesake. Make sure she knows the weight of the name she carries. And if you're willing, I'd like you to meet her someday. Tell her about her uncle she'll never know." My throat tightened. "Yeah, I'd like that." He nodded and walked out into the night. I sat there alone for a few more minutes, pulled out my phone and looked at the last text my mother had sent. "Proud of you, baby. Ray would be too." I typed back, "I hope so." Then I opened my photos and found the picture I'd taken of Ray's last notebook entry, the one that ended with, "Make the next right play, kid." I read it one more time. Then I put my phone away and stood up. The gym was dark now, empty. But tomorrow it would be full of people, full of work, full of purpose. Tomorrow we'd start building something that honored both Daniel and Ray, something that took the worst moment of multiple lives and tried to create something good from it. It wouldn't erase what happened, wouldn't bring Daniel back, wouldn't make Ray's lies okay. But it was the next right play, and that's all any of us can do. Make the next right play, and then the next, and then the next, until slowly, painfully, impossibly, something like healing becomes possible. I walked out of Riverside Gym and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow we'd open it again, for the kids, for the community, for Daniel's memory and Ray's redemption, For all the complicated, messy, beautiful ways that broken people try to fix a broken world. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened since Ray's funeral. The key, the notebook, the truth, the pain, the slow, difficult journey toward understanding. Ray had saved me by lying to me, and I was honoring him by telling the truth. Both things could be real. Both legacies could matter. That was the final lesson. The one Ray couldn't teach me while he was alive, but left for me to discover on my own. That people are contradictions. That love is complicated. That forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to build something new on top of old pain. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment. Looked up at the stars. "Thanks, Coach," I whispered. "For everything. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts." The stars didn't answer, but I felt something shift inside me. Something that felt like peace. Or at least the beginning of it. I went inside. Pulled out Ray's notebook one last time. Wrote my own entry on the last blank page. "Coach Ray, you were right. The next right play is all we have. So I'm making mine. I'm building the center. I'm working with Terrence. I'm honoring Daniel by making sure other kids get the chances he didn't. I'm not doing it because I've forgiven everything. I'm doing it because you taught me that basketball and life is about moving forward, about not dwelling on the mistakes, about making the next play. So that's what I'm doing. I miss you. I'm angry at you. I love you. I'm grateful for you. All of it is true, just like you were both the man who saved me and the man who failed Daniel. Both things are true, and somehow, that's okay. Thank you for the lies that protected me. Thank you for the truth you left behind. Thank you for teaching me that redemption isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. I'll make you proud, Coach. One play at a time. Love, Marcus P.S. I'm naming the main court after you, the Ray Henderson court. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And that's what the kids need to see. That real people make mistakes and still find ways to do good. That's your legacy. And mine too. I closed the notebook, put it back in the drawer. And for the first time since Ray died, I felt like I could breathe. The weight was still there. The pain, the questions, the complexity. But I could carry it now. Because Ray had taught me how. And because that's what we do. We carry what we must. We honor who we lost. We become better than we were. We make the next right play. Always. The Daniel and Ray Henderson Youth Center opened 6 months later. The gym was packed with kids, parents, community members, and reporters. My teammates showed up. Kevin was there with potential sponsors. Patricia Shaw came, tears streaming down her face as she saw her son coaching kids the fundamentals of basketball. My mother cut the ribbon, smiled wider than I'd seen her smile in 16 years. And me? I stood in the middle of the Ray Henderson court, surrounded by the noise and chaos and hope of a second chance. And I felt both Ray and Daniel there with me, not as ghosts, not as guilt, but as inspiration, as reminders of what's at stake, as proof that even our worst moments can become the foundation for something better, if we're brave enough to make the next right play, over and over again, until broken becomes whole, until tragedy becomes triumph, until the end of one story becomes the beginning of another. This was that beginning, and I was ready.